Roman Reigns and the Bloodline continued their story on the June 2nd edition of Smackdown in a major way. So let's see what's new there with them. The night starts off with the Bloodline with Paul Heyman walking to their locker room. And even with this moment right there, there was a small but very interesting thing to notice. Over the last few years of the Bloodline's dominance on SmackDown, their locker room was always named the Bloodline and featured their logo on the locker room door. But on the June 2nd edition of SmackDown, the Bloodline's name and logo was no longer on the locker room and was now replaced with only Roman Reigns' name and the blue logo. And that's an interesting little change because that's basically mirroring what's happening within the Bloodline's overall story. It went from being family-based and focused on all of them to being more and more focused on solely Roman Reigns, who's becoming more and more insane with his need and greed for power and control. Roman Reigns' narcissism and monarch-like attitude has caused him to accidentally push his family members away from him. If Roman wasn't so selfish and self-centered, chances are that the Bloodline would still be completely intact and never would have had any problems to begin with. But since he continued to manipulate, abuse, and use his own family members, he basically single-handedly caused the fall of the Bloodline to happen. So it's interesting to see the locker room name change because of that reason. Roman Reigns has really forgotten about the Bloodline members and is all about himself, which is causing chaos right now. But we see Paul Heyman talking with Solo Sikoa, and he tells Solo about how important this 1,000-day celebration is for Roman, and how they have to make sure that it all goes perfectly according to plan, without the Usos getting involved. Paul Heyman then pays a visit to Adam Pearce to double down and make sure that there's no way for the Usos to interrupt the main event segment for Roman's celebration. Triple H is out first for Roman's celebration, and he talks about how every once in a while, a talent comes along the way that truly changes the game forever. Triple H mentions all-time great athletes like Muhammad Ali and Michael Jordan, and how they really transform their respective sports. Triple H says that what Roman Reigns is doing right now in WWE is on the same level of changing the game. So Roman makes his entrance and is joined by Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. Obviously, there's no Usos in sight considering the events that happened during the closing moments of Night of Champions. Triple H reveals the brand new WWE Undisputed Universal title and hands it over to Roman Reigns. So some fans were asking questions about how the new title works and what it means for Roman's previous two titles. So what's happening there and what will happen to Roman's old titles? Well, it appears that this situation is similar to what went down with Brock Lesnar in summer 2014. During that summer, Brock's two titles were replaced and morphed into one new title. So, same idea here for Roman Reigns. The individual version of the Universal title appears to be softly retired, and now has its lineage mixed in with the WWE Championship's lineage. Roman no longer has two separate titles. He technically has one single undisputed WWE title. So, that clears up a lot of uncertainties for the fans talking about how WWE technically had 3 active world titles. With the introduction of the new Undisputed Universal title, WWE is pretty much completely back to normal of having 2 total world titles with 1 apiece on each brand. The new Undisputed title isn't really a completely reimagined title, it's basically the same title design and structure as the WWE Championship, just with a now gold center plate. But before Roman can really dive into what he wanted to say, he gets interrupted by the Usos. The Usos make their way to the ring and Jimmy Uso confidently steps up to Roman Reigns and stares him down. Jey Uso, on the other hand, isn't as confident and is off to the corner, being very frustrated and torn between what was going on in front of him. And Roman, being the massive manipulator and opportunist that he is, decides to roll the dice and see if he can capitalize off of Jey's torn emotions. Roman orders Jey Uso to kick Jimmy Uso in the face as revenge for what Jimmy did at Night of Champions, but Jey doesn't listen. Jimmy says the only one that needs fixing here is Roman Reigns. Jimmy explains that he did what he did at Night of Champions because he was being a brother, how brothers don't abuse and use each other. Jimmy tries to warn Solo Sikoa that once Roman gets done using him, he will abuse him and kick him to the curb. Roman decides to give Solo a mic and let Solo speak for himself. Solo said that he acknowledges Roman Reigns as the tribal chief, but how Jimmy and Jey are his brothers. So Solo hands the mic back to Roman and stands with the Usos. Jimmy and Jey try to squash everything with Roman Reigns. They tell him that everything can go back to normal with the Bloodline dominating the WWE, as long as they fix their issues and as long as Roman just dials it back and relaxes a bit. Roman appears to accept the proposal from the Usos and hugs Jimmy Uso, but eventually still says no and turns down the idea. Some pushing and shoving starts breaking out between Roman and Jimmy, which eventually leads to Solo Sikoa striking Jimmy Uso with a Samoan spike. After previously siding with his brothers, Solo Sikoa decides to walk out with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. This segment perfectly set up the official build for the Usos versus Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, which is being rumored to go down at Money in the Bank. But the other intriguing part of this story is that Jey Uso, basically, if you pay close attention to the details, Jey is the only Bloodline member who technically hasn't picked a side yet. We know Jimmy is strongly standing against Roman Reigns. We know that Solo Sikoa is now staying loyal to Roman Reigns. But it's Jey Uso who's still pretty much on the fence and is yet to make a firm decision regarding where he stands. WWE made sure to remind the viewer of this fact during the closing moments of Smackdown, where Paul Heyman asks Roman Reigns about what will happen with Jey Uso. Roman Reigns replies by confidently telling Heyman that Jey Uso will do whatever he does. He will fall in line. So Roman isn't sweating this current Bloodline situation because he believes that in the end, Jey will crack and will stay loyal to the Bloodline and go against Jimmy. So maybe that's a scenario that's running through Roman's head. Maybe he believes that we'll truly see Jey Uso turn on Jimmy Uso all in due time, and will stay in line just like how he's been for the last 3 years now. So that's an angle that they've been heavily teasing right now because of how vulnerable Jey Uso is in this current moment of time. He's been there before. He doesn't want any issues with Roman Reigns at all, but at the same time, he can't really go against his twin brother either. So it's a rough spot for Jey. So for the next few weeks of SmackDown, it could be very well focused and centered around Jey Uso picking a side. Either stand with Roman and Solo to put Jimmy Uso on an island by himself, or stand with his brother and accept the repercussions that could be coming from Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. If we had to take a guess, Jey will definitely pick Jimmy's side for this rumored Money in the Bank match. But it could be interesting to see where this story could go, depending on what happens at Money in the Bank amongst the Bloodline. But what are your thoughts on all the new developments with the Bloodline and Roman Reigns? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.